Hey guys, it's Peachy, and the month is April. What am I going to do next? Stick around and see. Did you know there was a Jazz Appreciation Month? No? Well, neither did I, and I love jazz music. I listen to mostly new artists like Boney James, Chris Botti, Kenny G, and the totally adorable Dave Koz. But I don't sleep on the originators either. Nat King Cole, Dizzy Gillespie, Ella Fitzgerald, to name a few. Jazz music is considered to be a cultural icon in American history. People all over the world listen to the bebop and play on notes as they dance throughout the night. Jazz Appreciation Month aims to encourage people to learn about the long, intricate history of this music genre, celebrate by exploring the jazz musicians of the past, and appreciate the cultural influence that jazz music now has in today's world. Jazz Appreciation Month was founded by John Edward Haas, a curator at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History in 2001. It aims to recognize the heritage and history of jazz. Initially funded by the Ella Fitzgerald Charity Foundation, JAM supports the jazz scene, encourages the appreciation of jazz music for the ages. This month was selected because so many famous jazz performers were born during April. Those born during this month include people such as Duke Ellington, Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, and Herbie Hancock. Jazz originated in New Orleans in the 1920s. Developed from sounds of blues and ragtime, it gave rise to different styles, drawing from national, regional, and local musical cultures. I found it only fitting to start off our month of Jazz Greats installment with the lady whose foundation started it all. Dubbed the First Lady of Song, Ella Fitzgerald was the most popular female jazz singer in the United States for more than half a century. In her lifetime, she won 13 Grammy and sold over 40 million albums. Her voice was flexible, wide-ranging, accurate, and ageless. She could sing sultry ballads, sweet jazz, and imitate every instrument in an orchestra. She worked with all the jazz greats, from Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Nat King Cole, to Frank Sinatra, Dizzy Gillespie, and Benny Goodman. Or rather, some might say all the jazz greats had the pleasure of working with her. She performed at top venues all over the world and packed them to the hilt. Her audiences were as diverse as her vocal range. There were rich and poor, made up of all races, all religions, and all nationalities. In fact, many of them had just one binding factor in common. They all loved Ella. Ella Fitzgerald was born in Newport News, Virginia on April 25, 1917. In 1934, Ella's name was pulled in a weekly drawing at the Apollo, and she won the opportunity to compete in amateur night. Ella went to the theater that night, planning to dance, but when the frenzied Edwards sisters closed the main show, Ella changed her mind. Once on stage, faced with boos and murmurs of what she's going to do, from the rowdy crowd, a scared and disheveled Ella made the last minute decision to sing. She asked the band to play Ohoigie Carmichael's Judy, a song she knew well because of the rendition was one of her mother's favorites. Ella quickly quieted the audience, and by the song's end, they were demanding an encore. She obliged and sang the flip side of that same record, The Object of My Affections. In mid 1936, she made her first recording, Love and Kisses. It was released under the Decca label with moderate success. By this time, she was performing at the prestigious Harlem's Savoy Ballroom, often referred to as the world's most famous ballroom. In 1938, at the age of 21, Ella recorded a playful version of the nursery rhyme A Tisket a Tasket. The album sold 1 million copies, hit number one, and stayed on the pop charts for 17 weeks. Suddenly, Ella Fitzgerald was famous. While on tour with Dizzy Gillespie's band in 1946, she fell in love with bassist Ray Brown. The two were married and eventually adopted a son who they named Ray Jr. At the time, Ray was working for the producer and manager Norman Granz on the Jazz at the Philharmonic tour. Norman saw that Ella had what it took to be an international star, and he convinced her to sign with him. It was the beginning of a lifelong business relationship and friendship. Under Norman's management, Ella joined the Philharmonic tour, worked with Louis Armstrong on several albums, and began producing her infamous songbook series. From 1956 to 1964, she recorded covers of other musicians' albums, including those by Cole Porter, Duke Ellington, the Gershwins, Johnny Mercer, Irving Berlin, and Rodgers and Hart. The series was wildly popular, both with Ella's fans and the artists she covered. I never knew how good our songs were until I heard Ella Fitzgerald sing them, Ira Gershwin once remarked. On the touring circuit, it was well known that Ella's manager felt very strongly about civil rights and required equal treatment for his musicians, regardless of their color. Norman refused to accept any type of discrimination at hotels, restaurants, or concert halls, even when they traveled to the Deep South. Norman wasn't the only one willing to stand up for Ella. She received support from numerous celebrity fans, including a zealous Marilyn Monroe. Ella once said, "I owe Marilyn Monroe a real debt. It was because of her that I played the Macambo, a very popular nightclub in the 1950s. She, being Marilyn, personally called the owner of the Macambo and told him she wanted me booked immediately," Ella continued, "and if he would do it, she would take a front table every night." She told him, and it was true. Due to Marilyn's superstar status, that the press would go wild. The owner said yes, and Marilyn was there front table every night. The press went overboard. After that, she never had to play a small jazz club again. She was an unusual woman, Ella referred to about Marilyn, ahead of her times, and she didn't even know it. Outside of the arts, Ella had a deep concern for child welfare. Though this aspect of her life was rarely publicized, she frequently made generous donations to organizations for disadvantaged youth, and the continuation of these contributions was part of the driving force that prevented her from slowing down. When her sister passed, Ella felt that she had additional responsibilities of taking care of her sister's family. In 1987, President Ronald Reagan awarded Ella Fitzgerald the National Medal of Arts. It was one of her most prized moments. In September of 1986, Ella underwent quintuple coronary bypass surgery. Doctors had to replace a valve in her heart and diagnosed her with diabetes, which she blamed for her failing eyesight. The press carried rumors that she would never be able to sing again, but she proved them wrong. Despite protests by family and friends, including Norman, Ella returned to the stage and pushed on with an exhaustive schedule. By the 1990s, Ella had recorded over 200 albums. In 1991, she gave her final concert at New York's renowned Carnegie Hall. It was her 26th time performing there. As the effects of her diabetes worsened, 76-year-old Ella experienced several circulatory problems and was forced to have both of her legs amputated below the knees. She never fully recovered from the surgery, and afterwards, she was rarely able to perform. During this time, Ella enjoyed sitting outside in her backyard and spending time with her son and her granddaughter. On June 15, 1996, Ella Fitzgerald died in her Beverly Hills home. Hours later, signs of remembrance began to appear all over the world. A wreath of white flowers stood next to her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and a marquee outside the Hollywood Bowl said, "Ella, we will miss you." Thanks so much for watching this first installment of Jazz Appreciation Month as I salute Miss Ella Fitzgerald. Bye for now.